Hello, everybody. I hope you're all doing well. I apologize for the lighting in the room. Once again, um, it's that time of night again where it's just really, really, really hard to find proper lighting. And like I said, it's been getting so dark so early now that it's really hard to find that perfect time of day to be able to film and not worry about like that being too bright or it being too dark that I can't actually have a light on in here. But what I wanted to talk about today is this is another installment in my Storytime series. For those of you who are new to my channel, checking in, Storytime is pretty much just a bunch of stories that I'm telling about like personal experiences that happen with me. Some of them are like road trips gone wrong or like vacations where things just don't turn out how we wanted them to, and they're actually pretty entertaining, even though they were to my expense. Also, other like paranormal or really weird things that I've had happen. The story I'm going to share with you guys today is actually a few different things have been happening recently over the past week. And I don't know, at first I kind of brushed them off, but now I'm starting to see like a series of things. And I don't know, call me crazy, but the things that have been happening I think are just too much of a coincidence to just brush off as being just that. So, where my story starts is everybody here knows about what happened with Scarlette, and it's been a really hard, like, almost 2 weeks now. And I don't know, like, the whole time after I was kind of just like, I've been thinking about her, and I'm like, I hope that she's okay wherever she is. I hope that she's okay. I hope she's doing well, and I was extremely upset. For those of you who didn't know, I wasn't at work for about 3 days. I didn't eat or drink for 3 days. I know it was very bad for me, but I was severely depressed, and honestly, I didn't leave bed. It was not good. So, I ended up going to the metaphysical store, the awareness shop, um, last Sunday. And I had picked up a few things there. One of the things that I picked up, which I had shown you all, was this cat tarot deck. So let me start the story here, because this is where everything starts to get weird, for lack of a better word. So when I was there, I was looking at tarot decks because I knew I really wanted one. And I know the whole thing about, you're not supposed to pick your first tarot deck. You're not supposed to buy your first tarot deck. Well, thankfully, my girlfriend ended up buying the deck for me, so I didn't purchase it myself. I knew I wanted either like a cat or a dragon deck. I had been back and forth between them. There were so many decks to choose from, and for those who saw a little bit about the awareness shop, you'll know that there's a lot to choose from. Like, they have wall upon wall of tarot decks, so it was hard. And I had asked to look at some of the cat decks, so I did. And there was one that I sort of kind of really liked, and the shopkeeper had said to me, she was like, well, let me get this one for you. So she went in the back of the store and she pulled this one out. And she was like, what about this one? Like, this one looks nice. So I was like, all right. Like, she was kind of telling me that this is the deck she thought would work best for me. So that's the one that I decided to get. So I get home, and I had been talking to her a little bit about tarot. And I said, I have looked at decks before. I really don't know a whole lot about them. I really don't know the difference between, like, tarot and oracle, because there is a difference. And she was explaining how oracle decks are not, like, necessarily a set number of cards, whereas a tarot deck is always 78. So when I got home, I opened the deck. I was reading about it, looking at the cards. And when I was going through all of them, the last suit that I went through, I noticed I had a duplicate card. That duplicate was the Sky Queen. So now, the Sky Queen, at first, I was worried there was a card that was left out of my deck. So I went and I recounted everything, and I had 78 cards plus 1. So I said, alright, this tarot deck was 79, which doesn't happen. So I said, alright, maybe it's got to be like, they accidentally threw in an extra Sky Queen. The first thing that came to my mind when I saw this card was obviously Scarlette. I used to call her Queen all the time, and Sky Queen being in the clouds, Scarlette had just passed away. So, in my mind, That's all I thought it was her. And I said, all right, maybe it's a sign that everything's okay. So I kind of let it go. I looked up a little bit about like what the Sky Queen meant in the book they gave me, and it had said she is the Queen of Swords in like a normal standard tarot deck. I was like, all right, that's cool, and I let it go, and I went about my week. So on Wednesday, my friend Steven and I went back to the awareness shop because he had to get a few things, and I went in there and I was telling him, I was like, I think it's interesting that this is what I got. And he agreed. He thought it was a sign from Scarlette saying everything was alright. So this is where the story gets really weird, guys. So, when we had gone the first time, Jen signed up for a rewards program. So everything was under her name. It was under her horoscope. You basically have to give them your horoscope, the time you were, or your date of birth, the time you were born, and it would generate your horoscope. And every month they pull a tarot card for you, and you get a taroscope. So basically everybody who's Scorpio this month, you all get the same tarot card pulled. But it'll print up the bottom of your receipt if you go shopping in the month. So I signed up for mine. So I only bought a few really small little things there. And when I got my receipt, well, they wanted to know what time I was born. So I had given it to them, and the woman, the store owner, had said to me, she was like, you really should look up your birth chart sometime. Because we were talking about, like, the rising signs. I'm not really big on, like, knowing all of this stuff. But she was like, it's good to know your birth chart and know, like, what signs you also are. Like, aside from the one you were born under. Like, your main one. So I said, yeah, I'll have to do that. So she's like, well, now that you know the time you were born, you can do that. So she says, I highly recommend that you go and you look it up when you go home. So then she was joking with me because she's like, oh, you're a Gemini. So she was like, do you double your favorite things? Do you have 2 of all your favorite things? So I was like laughing, and I was like, yeah, I'm really bad with that, and like I do buy 2 of like everything a lot of the time, which is awful. But it must be a Gemini trait. So I paid for everything. We're getting ready to go. And, I really wasn't thinking anything of it, but I was like, I'm going to go look up my other signs. When I get home, I'm going to do my birth chart. So we get to the car, and as soon as we get to the car, I sit down and I take out my receipt, because I'm like, hey, I'm kind of curious about, tarot card was pulled for my month. And this is my receipt right here, so you guys can see this, and no, I'm not freaking crazy. My taroscope for the month, for Gemini, is the Queen of Swords. Queen of Swords is the Sky Queen. So right away, I was like, hold up. Like, I just got 2 extra of this card in my tarot deck. Now, what was pulled for me for my monthly tarot, which every Gemini has gotten, it wasn't just me, and the shopkeeper did not know that this card was in the deck. It was the Queen of Swords. So I was like, alright, that's a little creepy, but, now it was starting to be like, this is definitely a sign. So I go home, and I ended up doing my birth chart. I don't really know, like I said, rising, falling, like what the exact terms are for like the other signs, but the other 2 main signs associated with the time I was born, Gemini is my main, and then the other 2 signs most associated with me are Virgo and Libra. So I was like, well, that's interesting to know, because I never knew that before. So I'm like, alright. Closed everything out. I went to bed. So all night I was thinking about this, the Queen of Swords thing. So when I was at work the following morning, I had a little bit of downtime. So I started pulling information about it. I was like, let me see what the Queen of Swords is actually about and says. So the Queen of Swords is pretty much revered as the highest queen in all of the suits. Which in my head, I'm like, well, Scarlette definitely was revered as the highest queen, and she would let you know that. So it was basically talking about, about strength and pulling through difficult situations, and how you have to lead with, with strength and compassion at the same time, and just like all this other stuff. So I was like, alright, that's good to know. But in one of the readings that I had like pulled up about the sign, I'm pulling it up on my phone right now, was about loss and grief. And this one stood out to me. And this was from buildingbeautifulsouls.com. And it was also on a few other tarot sites, but this is the one where I ended up screenshotting it from because to me, it basically was stated the best for this. So it states that the Queen of Swords also represents someone who has suffered a personal loss recently. Perhaps a loved one has died. Scarlette just passed away. It says the Queen of Swords bears her pain with grace and dignity and learns to let go. So that was my big thing, as I was like, alright, I think that's why it appeared, because this card supposedly appears, when you're working through pain and loss and grief. And it says here, working through pain, the Queen of Swords is all about becoming stronger, and she will heal. So I was like, alright, so definitely it was Scarlette telling me she's okay. So I keep reading the Queen of Swords and a little bit more into it. She apparently is of the element air. My star sign Gemini is an air element. So I was like, alright, so not only that, but her element is my element, so good to know. So I'm reading a little bit more, and apparently the two signs that are associated with her are Virgo and Libra. I never would have known that Virgo and Libra were my, associated signs with my star sign, had it not been for the shopkeeper who was like, you should do your birth chart tonight. Had I not done my birth chart, I never would have known that. But I did, and it ended up telling me that the two signs that the Queen of Swords is associated with are my associated signs. Gets weirder. All I was also thinking of is when she was like, do you double your favorite things? Do you have two of everything you love that are your favorites? Well, everybody who knows me knows that my favorite number is 26. I don't know why. I really don't know. But I've had some weird things happen with the number. Very important dates in my life have happened on the 26th of months. 26. It's popped up throughout my life. And actually, this house, my first house, I didn't know until after I was leaving from getting the tour of the house. It's number 26. And I was like, I did not know this, because all I got was basically where the house was, and I knew the area, so I knew which house it was, but I never actually looked up the number until I was leaving and it was on my mailbox. So just weird things like that. Well, apparently the number that's associated with the Queen of Swords is the number 52. And when I saw the number 52, I was like, that number looks familiar. And it's because when you double 26, it's 52. So I was like, alright, that's a little bit farther stretched, but I'm like, it's still a little weird, right? So I kept going through and just reading more and more and more about her, because now I'm interested, and I'm like, I definitely feel it's Scarlette. My first thought when I pulled this card was Scarlette. It's obviously the cat on there is not Scarlette. But the first thing I thought of was her, because, like I said, I called her queen. The sky represented the heavens. That's what I think of. So, I'm scrolling down, and the last thing at the very bottom was animal association. So my first thought is, alright, maybe it's going to be a cat. But it wasn't. The associated animal with the Queen of Swords is an owl. Here's where the story gets weird. I ended up telling my mother all of this, because my mother, her favorite animal is an owl. For years, she has been searching for a great horned owl that she knows lives in the area. It has babies every year, but she's never been able to find any of them because they're usually out at night, or she's in the wrong place at the wrong time. And they hide from people. They know where the people are. They are out farther in the woods where you can't get to them. So my mother said that she had been severely grieving Scarlett. She said for about a week she didn't want to eat. She didn't want to sleep. It was basically the same thing as I'd been feeling, and just how bad it was. So she said she was out for a drive, and she had a few errands to run. And this is the same day I got my tarot deck, mind you. She said all of a sudden she had the urge to go to, it's called the Vly, which is like a swampy area where she usually stops and takes pictures of a few birds that are out there in the summertime. Now there's really nothing out there because most of the birds that live there have flown south, or, it's very dead and there's not much there. In the summer and the spring, it's lively. There's turtles, there's frogs, there's all the geese, everything's there. But she's like, I don't know why I was drawn to go there because there's nothing there, and she never goes in the winter. She says as she started entering the Vlaai, there was a branch leaning over the road, and a giant horned owl was sitting there. She said she slammed on her brakes. She left skid marks in the road. She stopped in the middle of the road, got out of her car, and the owl did not move. The owl actually flew down into a branch right next to her. My mother was like this close to this owl. And she said the owl just kept staring at her and blinking. She said she took pictures of him, or her. My mother said she definitely felt that it was female. But she said she took pictures of her for about an hour. And she said she just stood there talking to this owl and like telling her, how beautiful she was. And she talked to the owl, and she says the owl just kept blinking and looking at her. And she said she felt like it was when she spoke to Scarlette, because Scarlette, as a cat, she always listened to you. If you could have a conversation to her, and she would actually listen and care about what you're saying. Like, some cats, I don't know, like Binks, I love him, but he's got a mind of his own where he'll listen for like 2 seconds and he's like, whatever, and walks away. But like Scarlette, you could talk to her for like 5 hours and she would like intently sit, blink, and look at you like the whole time you talked. Like, she actually was listening. And my mom said this is what this owl was doing. And she said the minute she saw the owl and started talking to her, and the owl just kept looking back at her and blinking, my mom said it was the strangest feeling in the world, but she said she felt all that sadness that she had over the loss of Scarlette leave her body. She said it was like starting from the top of her head and just slowly leaving. And she said she can't even explain it. And she's like, that's the best way I can explain this, is it felt like it was just all being taken away. And she says, the only thing that snapped the owl away is another car came, and then the owl left. And my mom said she felt like a spell was broken when the owl left. She says, I watched the owl fly away, and she says, I felt like a spell was broken when it left. Like, she was under some kind of trance or under like a spell. And she says all she thought of was Scarlette. But after that, after seeing the owl, she said she suddenly felt okay. Like, all that sadness went away. And, I mean, I still am very upset over Scarlette. But, like, since I've drawn this card, I don't know. Like, I feel, like, better. Not 100% better, but, like, I can't explain it. It's the same feeling she said, and it's so weird. And I told my mother last night, I called her up and I told her all of this. And then I had told her, I said, the Queen of Swords appears as an owl in your life. And my mother then told me all of this, because I knew she had seen the owl. I knew she had seen it, and she had told me, she says, I feel like Scarlette sent it to let me know that, Scarlette's okay. But after I told her this, my mother was like, that was definitely Scarlette coming to either say goodbye or to let us know that she's okay. And, see, I don't know what I believe about, like, what happens after death. I definitely believe in something. Either there's a place that we go when we pass on, whether that place be temporary or, like an eternal paradise, like heaven, or if, we're all energy. That's what we are. We're made up of energy. Or if our energy just gets transferred into something else, like, for instance, with Scarlette, maybe some of Scarlette's energy was transferred into that owl, and it really was her coming to say goodbye. Like, her energy was there. So, just little things like that. And I don't know, I just thought it was, like, really coincidental, weird, like, I wanted to share it with somebody and not have people think I'm crazy, because, like, I don't know, like I said, I believe in signs, I believe in these things, and my mom does too, and, like she said, everything seemed to add up. All of my friends believe me. They all agree that it was Scarlette, and, I felt better, because I feel like all these signs were basically her saying, she's okay, but she's still here. Like, part of her is still here. And, even if we can't be with her, all the time, and even if it's not, here, like, well, she's in my house and she's my cat, and she's still here. She's in nature. She's like all around us. Her energy is still here, and I feel like that made me feel so much better, and I think my mom did too. But yeah, that's pretty much what I wanted to share. I don't know, like I said, I believe in signs, and pulling the card the first time, I think really I felt her, but after I saw the repeats of things, I think it really solidified that it was her. And I don't know, like, I feel better. I feel so much better knowing that. And, I miss her. I love her more than anything. And it's so hard being here without her here. But, you know, I know she's still here. I feel it, and I know it. I hope you all don't think I'm crazy. But I really did want to share this because, like I said, this story meant a lot to me. The story was weird, and I just had to get it out there, and like somebody had to listen. Like I had to tell somebody. So I hope that you don't think I'm nuts, but you know. So my main question at the end of this video is: have you ever had anything like this happen? One of my coworkers I was talking to at work, she told me that something similar had happened with her about just things reappearing. The same thing shortly after her grandmother had died, and she was saying she took it as a sign that her grandma was letting her know she's okay. So I definitely feel like things like that do happen, and that's my main question: is have you ever had anything like that happen in your life with your loved ones? So let me know in the comments down below. And I promise I'll have some other videos up soon, but pretty much I wanted to get this out because it was so relevant and important, and I had to say something because it's been bothering me. So thank you guys for everything and for listening to me, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.